Sonny Dykes is being snubbed in best coaches in college football discussion.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. We are brought to you by FanDuel. Appreciate their sponsorship. You can live bet on NBA games if you want to. Later on in the show, some rough news for TCU baseball the day before their season opens. Now, you're watching this on Friday, so the season actually opens today, but this news came down Thursday. Ben Abel out for the year. Savion Williams and Jack Besh have been invited to the NFL Combine. We'll also get you ready for the Hoops weekend. Men and women are going to play. But we start today with it's list season. So we're in the middle of the off season, right? And frankly, people are looking for content. I'm one of them. I'm searching for content too. We all are. So college football writers, college football podcasters, trying to find fun and creative ways to engage people with discussions about college football. And one of the most popular ways to do that is to rank things, rank teams, rank coaches. So Ari Wasserman from On3, he came out with a list of the top 25 coaches in college football. Sonny Dykes is not on that list. And I will be honest with you, I didn't expect him to be. When I saw that he wasn't there, I wasn't shocked by that. And I wasn't ready to immediately fight it because I spent a lot of energy a couple off seasons ago trying to defend Sonny Dykes and say, hey, he won a playoff game. That means something. And he was part of these lists, but he was lower than I thought he should be. They went 5-7. This past year, they went 9-4. You might be saying to yourself, Steven, you wanted him gone after 6 games this year. And yes, you're right. But here's what got me. I'm looking through this list, and some of the coaches that I see, I'm like, wait a minute. Sonny Dykes has a better resume than these coaches. And obviously, yes, this is all subjective. There's different ways to go about it. But the first 5, I mean, there's really no debate, right? Kirby Smart, of course, Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkisian, Marcus Freeman, Dabo Swinney. That's 1 through 6. At number 7, Deion Sanders. Now, I feel like Deion's a lightning rod. He's a big point of discussion. I think I've been one of the more positive voices about Deion and his ability as a coach that's out there. Maybe it's because I saw up close and personal what his teams can do when they beat TCU a few years back. But I love the energy and enthusiasm he brings to the program. He brings a ton of hype to the program. He's done a great job in recruiting. Having his son as the QB, he's going to be a top 5 draft pick. That was a big deal. But he also went and got Travis Hunter, who was the number 1 player in the country in that recruiting cycle. And that was when he was at Jackson State. And he did a really nice job at Jackson State. But that being said, they were in the Celebration Bowl twice. They lost both of those games. And since he's been at Colorado, he's turned around that program in a big way. From a visibility standpoint, it's been a complete 180. And from a success standpoint as well. Colorado, when TCU played Colorado in the season opener in Boulder in 2022, that was one of the most irrelevant teams in college football. Nobody was talking about them. They were on their way to another 1-win season, and Deion got there and he turned it around. But let's be fair. They went 4-8 in year 1. This past year, they were much improved, but they didn't make a conference title game. They got destroyed by BYU in the Alamo Bowl, and they were at full strength. They played everybody. They made a big deal about playing everybody, which I can appreciate. That's awesome. But if you're going to do that, then you got to take the criticism when you fail. And it doesn't feel like they've pulled off a huge upset. They've had some nice wins. But Kansas State last year, they dropped that game, right? They lose in the bowl game to BYU. They lost to Kansas this year. Sonny Dykes has a better resume than Deion Sanders as a coach. He does. He won a playoff game at TCU. He's had a couple of winning seasons at TCU. He did a nice job at SMU. He did a good job at La Tech. Cal, yeah, that was a mess. But he has a better resume, and he's been more consistent than Deion Sanders to this point. Elsewhere on this list, I mean, Kurt Cignetti, I think very similar resumes. Kurt's at 12. At 14, Lance Leipold, ton of respect for Lance Leipold. Did a fantastic job at Buffalo. Was really good before that at the D3 level. Sonny's beaten him twice, and Lance is coming off a very disappointing season. I know Kansas turned things around late and had some impressive victories, but this was supposed to be their year. Jalen Daniels was supposed to be a Heisman candidate. They were going to be right there in the mix for a Big 12 title. They finished 5-7. If you're going to knock Sonny for finishing 5-7 a few years ago, you have to have that same standard for Lance Leipold, and Sonny's beaten him twice in head-to-head matchups. And then the one that really killed me. I mean, Bill Belichick at 21, it's so weird ranking Belichick because you really have to decide. I don't like him at 21. I feel like you either got to put him like in the top 5 and just say, out of respect for what he did in professional football, I have to immediately put him there, or you just leave him off the list because he hasn't done anything in college football. But Bill's at 21. The one that just made my head spin, Brett Venables at 23. Brett Venables, not as an assistant coach, not as a defensive coordinator. Brett Venables as a head coach ahead of Sonny Dykes. Oklahoma. Brett didn't take over Florida Atlantic, okay? I know Lincoln Riley didn't leave that program in the best spot, but we are talking about one of the most historic programs in college football. TCU beat the brakes off them in 2022. They had a horrible season for Oklahoma standards. Last year, or I guess 2 years ago, they were better. They were improved, but they didn't play for a conference title game. And then this past season, a complete mess at quarterback, finished with 6 wins, go to the Armed Forces Bowl in Amon G. Carter Stadium, and get beat by, was that Navy that took him down in that ball game? I think it was. I think it was Navy that took him down in that ball game. Brett Venables should not be ahead of Sonny Dykes as head coach if we're ranking head coaches. And so I think it's wrong. I think Sonny is better than some of the coaches on this list. The question I also had along with that, if he's not in the top 25, which he's not right now, what does he need to do to get there? And I know my friend Vince will chuckle and say he can't do anything to get there. And some of you might agree. But I'd love to hear from you in the YouTube comments, or you can tweet at me at SimcockSteven. What do you think Sonny has to do to get back in that discussion? Because he was right there in the mix not that long ago. One down season, 1 year that kind of in the eye of the beholder, I think ultimately was a success, but you can look at the schedule and look at the games they lost and say, man, they were this close to finishing 10-2, right? I think winning the conference title game and getting back in the playoff will go a long way. And, of course, it would be great if they were competitive in the playoff. And I'll be real. I mean, part of this, too, I hate to harp on this because I know it's a bad memory for so many of us, myself included. That loss to Georgia did so much damage. Getting in the national title game was such a huge moment. And I'll never take that for granted and never want to trade that for anything. But for a program like TCU that's always kind of fighting for relevancy and fighting for respect, it felt like that was the moment, even more so than the Rose Bowl to a certain extent, where you could sort of puff your chest out and say, okay, they can't say anything about us now. They can't make jokes about us or dismiss us now because we're here. We earned our way. We won that game. And then turn around and have it end like it did. It was just brutal. But I didn't expect to come on here today and defend the honor of Sonny Dykes because I didn't think he'd be in the top 25 list for coaches. He's not. I got to say, though, looking at some of the names that are there, he's better than some of those coaches. I think his resume is better than some of those coaches on the list. When we come back, a couple frogs get invited to the NFL Combine. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. So one of the things I've got to commit to it this year. I don't really have any more excuses. I'm not getting any younger. I need to eat healthier. And I also, just frankly, I gotta stop eating out so much. It's killing my budget. And it's tough, though, because as someone with a family that's busy all the time, meal prep is a very difficult thing to do. It's hard to find time to make 4 or 5 meals so that I have lunch for the week when I go to work. Check out Factor Meals today. If you're looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals, fresh, never frozen, ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. They have over 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week. You can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use the code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Again, that code is LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factor Meals. Give it a try today. A couple of frogs, or I guess I should say former frogs now, are headed to the NFL Combine. Jack Besh and Savion Williams will get to work out in front of all the NFL teams, go through the interview process, the whole thing. That's going to be a big week for Savion Williams. He did not participate in the Senior Bowl, in the practices, or in the game. I assume that's because of health, and I really hope that he's fully healthy and ready to go before the Combine. One, because it's just going to be his best opportunity to show what he can do in front of scouts, in front of general managers and coaches. Also get a chance to talk to those people and just put his best foot forward. But also, so much of Savion's ceiling as a prospect is predicated on what he can do athletically. The versatility, the ability to take the ball in the backfield, to become a matchup problem by moving him around in the formation, all the different things that he can do. It comes back to just the fact that, he's a freak of nature in the way that he can run, he can jump, and he just has things that you can't teach. So it feels like that's an area and a place where he can really show out and do some special things. I'm hoping that he's healthy. I'm hoping that he's ready to go. For Jack, I think the most important aspect of it is going to be the 40 time. Can he run a decent time? He's not a burner, but can he just show that he has good speed, relevant speed, run a time that's not going to make people have second thoughts about what you've done? He couldn't have asked for a better start to this process. At the Senior Bowl, he was fantastic during the practices. He was the MVP of the game, caught the game-winning touchdown. And, he's so good in media environments. I think he's going to do an outstanding job in those team interviews where they're asking questions of the players. Teams are going to be really impressed with what he can do. And I hope that he's able to sell the fact, he essentially learned a new position on the field last year. I know he's played wide receiver in the past, and at the end of the day, like, he's a playmaker. He's been someone who's used to having the ball in his hands and making things happen. But he made that move over to outside wide receiver and just immediately became the best guy. I mean, no disrespect to Savion, but Savion was supposed to be who Jack Bech was. And honestly, through the first half of the season, they couldn't find a consistent way to get Savion the ball. I mean, he showed some flashes like he has in the past. He did some nice things against Stanford, had those great touchdown receptions against UCF. But it wasn't until they moved him into the backfield and started doing all these different things with the Wildcat package and putting him at running back that you really saw him start to thrive. For Jack, from the jump, he was the dude, the number one wide receiver on the team, and it was awesome to see. So I hope for both those guys that they do a great job in the combine coming up, and it's really good to see that they're invited. Basketball weekend coming up. TCU men will play Arizona State at 7 p.m. on Saturday. Men trying to get back to 500 in conference play. Arizona State is coming off a tough loss on Wednesday night to Texas Tech in Lubbock. Double overtime, fell 111 to 106. So we'll see if they can bounce back quickly. But what a great shot by Vashawn Allett. I mean, I said this yesterday. I was like, I know people are frustrated with the team in general. And I get that. I'm not going to try to tell you how to feel. But I would encourage you to just sort of enjoy these moments because that was fun. Like, it was fun to see them celebrate. It was fun to see them find a way to win in the face of adversity. It was self-inflicted adversity in a lot of ways, but still they overcame it and were able to get a victory against Oklahoma State. And then the women, they play Arizona at 3 p.m. on Sunday. They're on the road as well. Arizona 6-7 in Big 12 play. So, dangerous team. And these are the types of games, like TCU has big games against West Virginia and Baylor. We're talking about the Big 12 championship race coming up. But if those games are going to mean something and still be a big factor in determining who's the Big 12 champion, then you got to win the games in front of you. And that starts with that game against Arizona on Sunday afternoon. I want to get to some of your thoughts on yesterday's show before segment 3, because I'll spend segment 3 talking some baseball. Dylan says, so yesterday I talked about Josh Hoover essentially being the Luka Doncic of TCU football. And what I meant by that was I posed the question. If there was one player on the roster who is untouchable or who you would not want to see hit the transfer portal and leave the team, who would it be? My first thought was Josh Hoover. Vince had a different thought. He said if Josh goes away, it would be a huge red flag, but he does think Josh is highly predictable, and he feels like the wide receivers, Jack, Savion, and JP, and their athleticism bailed out Josh last year. He's not completely sold that that's the reason his numbers are so good. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting perspective. I do think we will find out quickly just how good that receiving core was and how much TCU is going to miss having those guys on the field. Because, I mean, I just talked about it. Like, you got two guys that are surefire NFL draft picks. Another one in J.P. Richardson who will probably get a chance with the team. I don't know if he'll be a late-round pick or a undrafted free agent, but I would almost guarantee that he'll get an opportunity in training camp and in preseason to show what he can do. You're losing all that production. And I really like what Eric McAllister can do, but, yeah, it's going to be a huge adjustment for Josh. And it's also a chance for him to show, like, hey, I can do this without having elite wideouts, even though I think they do have a very deep group still. It's not a group that has a ton of production. Hoover said, or Off Track says, Hoover will be a massive loss. Imagine going into a game where the opposing defense knows you're going to pass 90% of the game because you can't run the ball. On top of that, you're down 14 points because your defense can't get off the field. Hoover played beyond my expectations. It was really impressive what he was able to do despite the fact that it was a one-dimensional offense. And I will say, I mean, they did a very good job, they meaning the coaching staff and specifically Kendall Briles, of scheming up some things in the short passing game and the quick passing game that sort of supplemented the run game and still put them in decent down and distances on second and third down. But you're right. I mean, he fought through a lot last year to put up some crazy numbers and still be an effective player. Tommy says Hoover be the biggest loss. Eric might be the second biggest on offense, and then maybe Colton Deary. Defense would be the Deal brothers 1 and 2. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And yes, losing Deary would be huge because he's moving over to center. He's got that versatility. He's been a solid player now for the Frogs for a couple of seasons. And Jacob said he was at the Schallermeyer Arena a couple nights ago when they played Oklahoma State. It was a crazy game. Should have won by 10 or 12, but got the dub, and it was a fun way to end it. Yes, it was, as I said, it was self-inflicted adversity, but they hung in there, they fought, and they ultimately executed that final play and won the ball game. And it was a fun moment. It ended up being number 1 on the SportsCenter top 10 list on Thursday morning. So that's cool to see. When we come back, some tough news for TCU baseball right before the start of the season. Ben Abelt out for the year. We'll discuss that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. FanDuel is where the game starts, and NBA games, they are in full swing right now. You can do live bets during NBA games, even if you miss the opening tip. If you want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the actions. You can do same-game parlays. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So before we go, TCU baseball, they're kicking off their season tonight, 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus on the road against San Diego. San Diego's a good team. They won 41 games last year. They won their conference. So as usual, TCU not ducking anybody in non-conference play. They're playing tough teams. But some tough news. Kendall Rogers reporting that Ben Abelt, who's been in the bullpen the last few years but was expected to be part of the starting rotation this season, he is out for the year already. A UCL strain that they decided ultimately he's going to have to undergo surgery. So he's done for the season, which means he wasn't going to be a part of this weekend's rotation anyway. They had already announced that. The hope was it was just kind of a precautionary measure, though, and a temporary thing. Now it's not the case. Caden Parker is going to get an opportunity on Friday to show what he can do as the ace of the staff. Tommy Lepore, Wichita State transfer, who's got good stuff. I mean, he's a guy that can pour it in the mid-90s. He'll also get an opportunity to start. And then Trevor Baumler, true freshman, will get a chance on Sunday. It's a 4-game set. Monday's TBD. I mean, Ben has been their most consistent pitcher over the last few years. So you're losing that, which is a big deal. You're also losing your versatility because with Ben as a starter, you can kind of shuffle some things around and have more depth and options in your bullpen. Now that's sort of in flux as well. The good news is you have non-conference play to sort of play around with roles and figure out who might emerge as a potential dude. I mean, Baumler's going to get a chance here as a true freshman to show what he can do as a starter. Lepore, the transfer, will get an opportunity as well. I would think Luis Rodriguez probably gets a chance to show that he can make it happen. He's been a starter in the past, right? Like he's comfortable in that role. He's also done a really good job in middle relief and long relief, but there's no way to sugarcoat it. I mean, it's a big loss. I was super excited to see what he could do. And I guess selfishly, my first reaction on social media was the Michael Scott gif where he's just screaming no. My mom actually saw that, and she was like, I feel like you're being selfish, son. You need to first feel sorry for the person that's hurt. And she's right. Like, first of all, like, I just feel gutted for Ben Abelt. This was a big opportunity for him to help his draft stock and potentially end his college career. I don't know what's going to happen now, if he'll try to work his way back and come back to TCU, or if he'll try to work his way back and go to the MLB draft. But we were going to get to see a different side of him this season, and now that's been taken away from us before the season starts. That really stinks. But best of luck to him and his recovery and with surgery coming up. And I guess if there's any silver lining, it's that you know about this before the year and you can just start planning for it now and hopefully figure some things out during non-conference play before Big 12 play starts in a couple of weeks. We'll be back on Monday. Thanks for hanging out with me this week. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.